Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larsen. On this episode, we get to have Dirk Van Reenen, founder at Merus Adventure, and he's got a leadership training company and a bunch of interesting things in his background. And shout out to mutual friend Pete Newell, who has been on the show here, and also Terry, who made this happen. So Dirk, tell us what the leadership training company is, and then I got 100 questions about Merus.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and thanks, Jess. Really excited about the opportunity. So we've got a leadership training company called Bergflow, and what we specialize in is building teams in the workplace. Really great teams who can come together, cohesive teams that can collaborate well, and they're really highly committed to driving initiatives forward. So we've been doing that type of work now for about 10 plus years, and we specialize in primarily leadership teams, how to build teams, how to recruit teams, put them together, and a little bit of kind of art and science to that. But really love that kind of work. But I'm also excited to really jump in and talk about Merus today.
That's great. And what's the website for that one?
So Bergflow is just bergflow.com, bergflow.com.
Okay, and then what's the website for Merus?
It's merusadventure.com. M-E-R-U-S?
Yeah,
M-E-R-U-S.
Okay.
Adventure.com.
Okay, so people who listen to this show know about our investment fund and how over the moon excited I am about action sports real estate. And So why don't you start on the overview of Merus, and then I got a lot of questions.
Yeah. So really, Merus is something that was birthed as an idea back in 2012, and during that time, I was kind of coming off of a really heavy failure from 2008, being in business, and so for a big part of that part of my journey, a lot of my getaways were just me grabbing a backpack or a mountain bike and heading off into a place called Palo Duro Canyon, which is in Texas. And so Palo Duro Canyon is actually the second largest canyon in North America. And nobody really knows or believes that the second largest canyon in North America is actually in Texas. But it is. It's a 1.3 million acre canyon, but it's almost all privately owned. There's 2 state parks in the canyon. And one of the state parks is the one that I used to go to all the time. And I just kind of had this crazy idea of man, what would it be like to have kind of a privatized version of a state park that you could offer additional, amenities, amazing customer service, and, you kind of open it up to some other activities as well. And I actually tried to work on the project back then, and nothing really came of it. So I went on a different journey, kind of in the real estate world and then the leadership development world, and kind of during COVID in 2020, it all just kind of came back to the forefront. But really, this time it was a little bit different lens, right? With really paying attention to kind of what's happening with public access to land in the U.S. and the fact that more and more public access land is getting shut down every single year. And a lot of people, are really oblivious to that trend happening, and really looking at if I were to kind of look 20, 30 years into the future, what are my kids and grandkids going to be able to enjoy as far as land access? So I really started just thinking about, okay, let's kind of go back to that idea of what does it look like to have a privatized version of a state park or a national park? And what would it take to bring a project like that to life? And so that's really the genesis of Merus. And a big part of it is, how do we truly connect people through outdoor adventure? For me, I grew up in South Africa. So from the time I was a little kid, I was outside all day, and didn't matter what I was doing. It was just outside playing, enjoying nature, fishing, hiking, hunting, all kinds of stuff. It was just part of the lifestyle. And so it's always been just kind of in my DNA to want to be outside and to do fun things. And as we came to the U.S., kind of adventure sports kind of entered it. And the business that actually failed in 2008 was a ski and snowboard shop. So I used to be in that industry for about 7 years, from the time I was 21 to 28. So I love the mountains, but that's kind of where the genesis of Merus is it's kind of the thought of like, what does a privatized version of a state or national park look like?
I love it. And so how big is your ranch acreage area?
So we've got 5,500 acres in the canyon up here, and for that size of land, the interesting thing is, when you have land with a lot of topography, you tend to get bonus land, right? So most of the land when it's surveyed is surveyed on kind of a flat plain. So anytime that you have mountains, canyons, any kind of elevations, you get bonus land. So we probably have closer to about 7,500 acres of usable land, and we've really designed trail systems out here for off-roading and overlanding, for hiking and then mountain biking that really use the topography here. Because when we bought this land, there wasn't anything on it. And it was a kind of a dilapidated, cattle ranch. And we've kind of taken on the project to say, okay, what does this look like to become an outdoor adventure resort that could really become the prototype for, expanding this kind of model throughout the U.S. So that's kind of what we started with.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, there hasn't necessarily been a ton of innovation in travel and outdoor activities. As you look over time, I mean, look at all the upgrades we get in technology every 3 months, right? And, hiking's still kind of just hiking, right? And the national park says you can go here and you can do this and you can't do that. And, there's not a ton of change. And yet there is like a thirst. I mean, we really saw this during the pandemic of people getting outdoors and getting outdoors together. And, there's so many studies talking about the state of loneliness in the country and how with our devices and just other demographic trends going on, like even though people interact and they have, hundreds or thousands of connections online, they're spending less time with humans doing an activity with another human, which sounds funny, except that I see my teenagers, right? My teenagers, we live on the side of a mountain outside of Park City. And my teenagers do a lot more than my friends' teenagers in the city, right? But they're still like, there's lots of time. They're in a room watching Netflix. They're, I played video games as a kid. I watched, Star Wars 1, 2, and 3 in a row. Like, it's not like we didn't have screens or things. But like the percentage of time that we spent outdoors at, like, even just one generation ago is significantly different, right? And I think what I like about your videos on YouTube, everybody should check out Dirk's YouTube channel. There's a lot of smiles. All these people in these Jeeps, or like, I'm looking at your Instagram and these like mountain bike races and stuff going on. Like, there's a lot of smiles. There's a lot of like people sitting around in their camp chairs, and you can tell somebody's telling a joke because there's like 4 other people laughing. Tell me your thoughts on that and how you guys approach that.
Yeah, kind of rewind a couple of years, like 2018, 2019. And one of the things that I kind of found in my own family was, we're living in Houston at the time. Birkflow was starting to do really well. We had launched another startup company that was doing really well. We're living in a 5,000 square foot house in Houston. And all of a sudden I kind of started getting this realization that my family just wasn't as connected anymore. And everybody's kind of in their own room, on their own device, doing their own thing. And it's like we're not really spending quality time together. And I just felt this like calling to get my family back into nature. So and that's actually when we bought a Jeep and started building an overland trailer, and we're just like, hey, we're gonna go explore, and we actually, here's the crazy thing. So we did that in 2019. I took my company virtual in January of 2020, and we started homeschooling in January of 2020. So, a couple of months later, COVID hits, and it's like, dude, we were set up, and we just hit the road and we started traveling. I mean, it was like a whole different thing. Like traveling with, my son at the time was, 12 years old. My daughter was like 7, and traveling in a family of 4 in a Jeep, lots and lots of miles. I mean, that was like an interesting adjustment, but what I found is like being in small places together and like the Jeep, like traveling in really kind of small quarters, and then spending just a lot of time in beautiful places, like where, you do these epic excursions and go for hikes, and we're overlanding. And when we just started kind of calling our friends and, being like, hey, like, why don't you guys buy an off-road vehicle and, go overlanding with us? And they're like, what is overlanding? And we kind of explained it to them. And I mean, it took about like 6 or 7 months. And all of a sudden we had like, a group of about 8 or 9 different families that we would all just meet in Colorado or in Utah or places like that and go overlanding together. So this whole kind of thought of connecting in nature.
Hold on. How do you explain it? How, what's your short version of what overlanding is? How do you explain it?
It's kind of like a modern day gypsy, like you're car camping out of a vehicle, but you're building a really capable off-road vehicle that can really get you to some pretty amazing places, but you're really self-sufficient. So you want to be sufficient to maybe at least 3 to 5 days off trail, kind of away from the city or all that kind of stuff, where you still have amenities, right? So it's not just like kind of you got a tent and like a tiny little pocket rocket stove or something like that, like backpacking style, right? It's a little bit more, you have a little bit more amenities. But if people are listening, you've probably seen these vehicles everywhere now. Like it's an off-road vehicle. It's got maybe a rooftop tent on it, or like other things kind of bolted onto the vehicle. And the whole overlanding scene has just exploded. But it's modern day car camping, and with the ability to be able to go to really cool places. Yeah, so that's overlanding for you.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, I remember we were talking to some of the investors for our properties, because we're looking at, so right now the ones we're looking at is there's a big reservoir out here south of the Park City area called Strawberry. We're working with the landowner at Science National Park. We're working on some stuff south of Grand Canyon. We got one at Puget Sound across from Seattle and Tacoma. That's our first one that's under construction, right? And I remember talking to some of our investors, and they were like, are there really that many people interested in that? Like, is that really a business? And I was like, how do you not know this? Like, how could you think that? And so, but I didn't have any stats or figures, but one of the guys who's on the podcast, Brad Pinvidic, wrote this like amazing book for anybody who needs to raise money. Go get the 3-minute rule, okay? And he's like, oh, I've solved that question for you permanently, Jess. And he sends me a report from the outdoor, I don't know what they're really called. They're like the Outdoor Association or something, the lobbyists, okay, for America. Do you know the outdoor industry is doing like $800 billion a year, and $700 billion of it is travel related? I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, the industries are really, really big. And, the interesting thing, when we looked at a lot of trends before we opened the park, because we really wanted to study everything pre-COVID. We knew that COVID was some kind of an outdoor bubble, that that there's going to be a contracting effect at some point, right? So we really try to kind of look at data from like 2015 through like early 2020. And when we looked at hiking, when we looked at mountain biking, when we looked at off-roading, overlanding, things like that, there were just strong growth trends in all of these different sectors. So that's what kind of gave us the confidence. And of course, you saw what happened in COVID. And the big question mark is, how big is the retraction going to be from kind of the COVID era? Like, do people kind of go back to the point where they just sit in their condo and kind of just sit in the city? And, we haven't really seen that there's been a huge contraction from that. Like, I mean, I think like people got a taste of a lifestyle and working remotely and being able to do cool things, and they don't want to go back to the way it was before.
Do you know how many founders and CEOs I've had on the show that are like 18 months into COVID, they're like, enough is enough. And they went and bought a house somewhere beautiful instead of just being convenient in the city. And like, this is my vote, and you tell me what you think, but I think that COVID like lasted long enough. Like if COVID had been 3 months, 6 months, I could have seen it snap back. But I think it was long enough that people like changed. Like, our kids, we've done private school, public school, homeschool. I remember when we started doing homeschool like a dozen years ago, I was like, honey, we cannot do homeschool. We can't have weird homeschool kids. Like, we don't want to be that family. She's like, no, it's going to work like this. Do you know how many of my friends homeschool now? Just wealthy people, entrepreneur people, outdoors people that are like, oh, why would we want all these limitations? Our kids get one-on-one help, all this thing, and we do this, and we're spending a few months here and then a few months there. I was just in my my buddy lent me his house in LA last week for a week, and they had just spent a month there. They go spend the summer in France, like not in like some ritzy place in Paris, but they've like got a place out in the countryside that's like really cost effective, and they just go spend the summers there. And there's like, it does feel like COVID lasted long enough that it broke something, so that we're not going completely back to how it used to be. Do you see it differently?
And I 100% agree with that. Same thing. I mean, we've got a lot of friends. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. I think it's becoming really common today for entrepreneurs to homeschool because they just see there's so much flexibility. And I mean, like the truth is there's very few things that you have to be on site for anymore. Like so many things you can be done virtual. But one thing that's interesting, we just kind of went through another round of hiring here at Merus and kind of upgrading our team, like our 2.0 team after the initial startup launch. And we've got like 70 people that applied to become park hosts here over the last like 3 weeks, right? So, and it's just fascinating to look at the kind of people that want a lifestyle change and people that, they're executives, they're people that are kind of getting retired, they're young people that are just starting out. I mean, like it's like the wildest thing that, there's this whole industry, and I didn't know that this existed really before Merus, right? But there's a whole industry of people that they want to do cool work, they want community, they want, and they're not into stuff that much anymore. I think like that's the big thing. I think we're getting away from a generation of people just wanting stuff all the time, and more people want experiences.
I agree with this so much. I feel like, I don't know if it was just because of all the money from like the 2001 bubble or the 2008 bubble, but I feel like there was a much more emphasis on how fancy is your car and some of these things. And then it was almost like everybody's talking about experiences. Oh, somebody wants an experience, right? But I feel like it's almost like experiences 2.0 is like, who are you having the experience with? Like experience, like connection while having the experience. And it's not just like, can we go to some exotic hotel in Thailand and ride the elephant? It's like, who went with you? Who did you meet while you were there? Who were you spending time with? I don't know if you see that, but I feel like we've moved past people just saying experience to like experience plus connection.
I think a big part of this comes back to what you were talking about a while ago when we talk about solitude and isolation, right? And man, people crave community. With Merus, we've got a membership model, and one thing that I think have done really, really well is created this model where we bring people together through community, and people are coming here and they're meeting new people that they can go on outdoor adventures with. That like this is becoming like a hangout place for them. I mean, we got people that are they're driving 4 or 5 hours every weekend now to come to Merus to come hang out here and go adventuring with their new friends, and their kids are getting into it. And it's like it's just people want to share experiences with other great people, because I mean it like like you get a great day, just an epic powder day with your friends, right? It's just so much better than going out there solo.
Yeah.
And I think like that's what people want, is they want those peak experiences with other people they can share it with. They want the fist bump and the high five and the hug and and sit around the campfire at night and just talk about like how amazing that day was. I think like more and more people are craving that.
So, I'm super interested in the hospitality part of it as a financial driver, right? I'm interested in your feedback of like, because you've got your lookout cabin that's like no electricity, no water, more of the shell, right? But it's half price. And then you've got the cabins with, everything people would expect. I'm interested in who stays where and how you're finding people's interest and kind of what you're learning through that.
Yeah, it's still very early for us.
Let's throw the tents in there too, right?
Yeah, so if we look at people are kind of just camping in tents, they're overlanding, right, which is what we talked about a while ago. They're glamping. They're staying in kind of a little primitive cabin, or they're staying kind of in a fully loaded cabin, right? So that's kind of what we offer here. We're still trying to kind of figure out exactly what that looks like. It's still very new for us. Like we've really been building infrastructure for the last 30 months, and a lot of our cabins have been online for about 4 months now. But I think it comes down to, one, are people coming out with the family? We find out like, hey, we're going to have the whole family there. The spouse is coming, whatever the case may be. So we tend to find people that if there's somebody in the family that's not quite into the primitive thing, that they want the cabin, because then it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? So you can stay at the cabin. You don't have to go stay in a hotel in town and still drive out here, but you can stay in the cabin. You can hit the trails really quickly. Sometimes if it's like, we'll stay at the cabin because of the kids, but we also find sometimes that people are like, man, I want my kids to go camping. I want them to have that primitive experience. We want to do the thing where it's like, out in the middle of nowhere, so I don't know that I can really answer that we've got the data dialed in at this point. Like maybe we will in another year, and as we continue to build that out. But I mean, we've seen people that, they're really saving up to come stay at the cabin for a weekend. And we've seen people that are like really wealthy that are just like, put me out in the most primitive thing and just let me take care of myself. Right. So I don't know at this point that we've got really good data. It's a little bit all over the place.
Yeah. And your thought to allow that entire spectrum, where did that come from? Instead of saying this is what it is at our property.
Yeah, I think number one is like I personally like options, right? So when I go somewhere, I want to be able to have options. And I tend to also, when I go places sometimes, like I want to kind of figure things out. Like I enjoy the challenge. So we've really kind of crafted this experience that if you want a challenge, you can make this as challenging as you want to. Like, some of the most primitive, furthest campsites from our office, once you check in, it's over an hour, and you have to have 4-wheel drive to be able to get to those sites, That's a big difference than like kind of pulling in and being at your cabin in 5 minutes, right? So I think it's one of these things to look at, because here's the thing, like people hear park. They're like, oh, it's a park, so there's nothing fun about it. And when you come out here, and I mean, we've got 5,500 acres, but I mean, some of our neighbors have 20,000 acres, 60,000 acres. Like we're on this kind of point where the vastness of Texas opens up in our backyard. And when you're back there, you're going to feel as remote as you are going to feel at just about any place in Colorado or Utah or Arizona or anywhere else out west. And it's a unique experience because I think like people hear park and they think like, oh, there's a fence and you can only drive so far. But people come here, we've got 54 miles of trails, and it would take you, if you were driving off road and you had a really capable vehicle and you knew what you were doing, it would take you over 4 days to run all the trails that we had. So it's not something that you're going to be here in a half a day, you see everything. Like we've had people that have come back 3 or 4 visits and they still haven't seen anything. We haven't even explored probably half of the land that we have. So there's still so much, vast experience. So I think like that's the thing is like, can people come here and they can have the very safe experience of, okay, hey, I know this is a private park. I know that there's some measure of security there for my family, right? I can stay in a nice cabin. If something happens in my vehicle, I can call and they'll come help me. Or if I get lost hiking, somebody will come get me. All the way to, hey, I kind of want to kind of get lost in the backcountry. And creating these experiences really opens up, what we can do with this. I love creativity in outdoors, right? And there's such cool things that you can do when you get the right creativity and the right resources and team, funding, everything behind you. And I think like that's what's interesting to explore to me is that, what does this look like? And especially 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into the future, because, for us, we want to expand this. We're kind of envisioning 6 to 7, what we call like macro parks, like large scale parks like this. And then also some micro parks, like some smaller acreage parks. But what does it look like to have a membership where one membership gets you to a place that every time you're going to get amazing customer service? There's going to be really fun things to do for you and your family. There's always going to be somebody new to meet. There's a culture of connection, of community, a welcoming culture that like you show up, you don't have no clue what you're doing. People are going to make fun of you or, kind of push you aside. People are going to welcome you with open arms and like, hey, come with us out. Like we're going to teach you how to do the thing today. So for me, it's like, that's the kind of thought that, it's a big hypothesis, but I mean, like, we're starting to prove this out that there's something here.
I think you really hit something on there. Like I remember watching your videos for the Toyota takeover, right? And you've got like this mud puddle here, that hole here, this puddle there, so the wheels go this way and that way and the thing's rocking all over the place. But you got a coach outside saying, oh, come for a little straight, no, jig to the left, whatever. There's so many people that want to do something exciting. But if you're not in it already, it feels like the bar can be so high. Like, I always wanted to be a dirt biker. Okay. Finally got a dirt bike, but like, I didn't grow up doing dirt bike mechanics. And like, unless you get the new electric Stark Varg, okay, like you're going to do a lot of maintenance if you're going to be a dirt biker.
Yeah.
Like dirt bikes are just, it's the worst user experience for a new person of having to like, now I need to become an auto mechanic. Do you know what I mean? Right. And I'm like, I hated it. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to replace this seal. Like, how do I know if it's even upside down or backwards? Like, I basically I'd watch a bunch of YouTube and I'm like, I don't know. So it's like, I'll just take it back to the shop and get them to do it. Unless I could get a buddy to come over and be like, hey, is this right? I kept taking it to the shop for stuff because dirt bikes are always breaking, right? Well, especially if you trash them and jump them and stuff.
Probably depends how you ride them, right?
Okay. But that idea of like, instead of like the cool kids club where you're worried about looking dumb, something welcoming, something where people help you get your start, something where there's like, hey, like I love how you borrow from the ski hills with the green circles and the blue squares and the black diamonds and the double black diamonds and the like saying, hey, if you're a green circle kind of person, that we've got something for you, right? So many places aren't like that, right? The aficionados just want to go double black all day, every day. But what if you're not at that level yet? How do you get in? And I think that as I look at the benefits to me and my family and the family I grew up in by spending time together out in nature, like nature never goes out of style. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if the bar is too high, people don't get there. And so I'm a huge fan of this idea of the, make it easier for get people started. Give the chance for people to feel welcomed instead of feel like an outsider. I think it's great for our whole industry. I think another thing I really admire about your guys' approach, and so when Terry asked if we wanted to have you on the show, I said yes right away, is you have embraced something where what you're doing is so dramatic, it is his own marketing. Like you guys don't have to think up something crazy to try and make it seem exciting what you're doing. Like you have so many videos on YouTube of like other YouTubers I can tell you didn't pay to make a video about you. You're like, so I'm out here at Merus and right? And it's like your stuff is difficult enough that they're like some guys are getting stuck and having to get towed out and like there's some teeth to it. It's not just all bubble wrapped. And I feel like there's so many CEOs that are like, well, we've got our thing and it's good enough and we'll just have to think up really good marketing instead of like pushing like, no, this thing is so great. We don't have to pay people to find out about it. They look cool for having talked about us.
I think, there's a couple of things that I want to just kind of jump into here. Like the one thing is, just coming back to like taking out the intimidation factor about doing things in nature. I think, at a certain level, I think people have overcomplicated what it takes to have outdoor adventure. And, they think that they have to have the most expensive gear, like all this and all this. And there are people, we regularly get people that pull up in, $80,000 vehicles, $100,000 vehicles, and then they put another $20 or $30 or $40 or $50,000 into their vehicle, and they come out here and they're just not confident, right? And when the truth is, you don't need a lot of that, right? And what we've really wanted to do, and we found this out, by the way, like because a big part of what we're doing, and I'll talk about this next. We had a lot of assumptions when we did this. And one of the things that we were really surprised by is like how many new to the sport kind of people were coming out here. And I think it's from the start, we took the intimidation factor out of it. When we said, listen, this is not about like just really having to know everything that you're doing. And of course, like the off-roading and overlanding is a big part of what we do, right? But like we did say no to motorcycles, side-by-sides, and ATVs, because like in our world, like it's like Merus is a slow speed, low noise park. And when we looked at the statistics, 99.5% of all injuries and deaths in the off-roading space were from motorcycles, UTVs, and ATVs, right? So by kind of saying no to those things, we said no to a huge market. And so we said no to a lot of business and a lot of dollars, but we said yes to kind of creating an environment, because we're right now, I think, like, we're one of the only places in the US that doesn't allow those other vehicle types, right? And I mean, we got berated for that. Like, people were upset, that we opened this place that we don't allow them. But the experience here, if you want to learn how to like off-road and overland, and a lot of people, I think, kind of hear off-roading or kind of off-road park, and they're thinking like, all right, it's a bunch of rednecks, throwing Bud Light around. I mean, it's just like, loud music, and it's so far from that, right? It's people that, like you said, they want to go off-roading. They've always kind of had this dream of like, I want to own a Jeep or a 4Runner or a Bronco or like something like this, or like my dad had one of these, and we've just taken the intimidation factor out. And I mean, we hold kind of ladies events now, where like ladies are coming out and they're learning how to off-road, and they're doing amazing things out here. And it's just about, it doesn't matter what you pull up in. What matters is how you're treated, and taking the intimidation factor out of it. And that kind of leads me to the next point, is that, yes, we have a business now that is like amazing when it comes to marketing, because everybody that comes here is part of our marketing team. Everybody that comes here is posting stuff on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And our YouTube channel actually sucks. Like, I don't think it's very good at all. Like, we haven't really focused on it. We've just been heads down building this place, But the cool thing is, from day one, our goal was to take care of every single person that comes here. And we now have over 300 Google reviews with a 4.9 rating. And like, if you read those ratings, like, people are just like, one, the place is just stunning. It's just absolutely beautiful. But people are like, they've got the best staff ever. Like, they cared so much. They really helped me. They got me plugged in. They showed me, right? And like, that's the thing that we're committed to, again, is like creating an amazing user experience. And I think when in a business, when you are really committed to doing something that's different, because again, we could have said yes to ATVs and UTVs and this, and like, we could have, 10x'd our traffic overnight. And we can still do that today. If we said yes to those things, we could 10x our business overnight. But we're on this path to creating a unique experience. And I think, like, when you're driven to do something like that in business, and you're willing to say no to a lot of things that may even get you ahead faster, but you're truly committed to a cause, and you're truly committed to a mission, and you live that mission every day, people respond to that.
So I got to ask your advice. I keep thinking, so like, I think there's only like 3 ski resorts in America that don't allow snowboarders. I think it's like Taos, and then there's like, and 2 of them are in my own backyard.
Taos is open now.
Is it?
They allow snowboarding, yeah.
Okay. I can't remember. So I think there's one other, and then there's 2 in Utah, Deer Valley and Alta, right in my backyard. Like, I can see the top of Alta from my house, okay? I've thought a whole bunch of times about the reviews and the things, like, all these skiers talk about like how great they think it is that there's no snowboarders there. And like, there's this purist crowd that like love not having me there for whatever reason. It's their thing. And like, I was like a snowboarder in like the early 90s when there was actually a skier snowboarder rivalry. So maybe it's a lot of leftovers of that. But like, I think there's something that they feel like, oh, this is our people, right? And
right.
So we're trying to do like stuff outside of national parks and stuff at surfing beaches and wake surfing lakes and snowboarding mountains, backcountry kind of stuff. And I keep thinking about like, do I have the guts to do a snowboarder only? Or like, the only skiers are only allowed with a buddy pass. Like, you have to be accompanying a snowboarder to be allowed or something. Because I want it to be family, and there's a lot of families that are mixed ski or snowboarder.
Right.
But like, I think that there's this place for like the people who like, there's like people who snowboard, and then there's snowboarders, right?
Right.
And like, the idea of making like the only snowboard only resort in the world is marketing itself. And so like, I'd be chopping off 65% of the market by not allowing skiers, but does it draw more of the people who like bleed snowboarding? I don't know. It's my debate.
I think it's a risk, right? I think it's a risk, and it's a gamble, right? And there's only one way to find out. but it's an interesting thing. Like I think when you really create an environment that people can experience something there that they just can't experience anywhere else, right? Because, initially we thought we would get a lot more localized type traffic. Over 95% of our traffic comes from more than 2 hours away. And on a regular basis now, we get people that are driving 10 hours one way to come to Merus. Because, again, they come here. We just had another YouTuber, Ozark Overland, that they hosted kind of a fans event here this last weekend. And they had probably about 120 people that, came from all over the U.S., and they came here and they had this experience, and it was so unique because, and here's I think why skiers like it, right? Well, I can imagine. I kind of started off skiing, but I snowboarded for like 20 years, and actually like 2 years ago with my kids, I started skiing again, right? And I'm actually enjoying that. So for me, I don't get enough days on snow. Like my snowboarding skill has kind of like, just flattened out. Like I need to get a lot of days on snow to get better at snowboarding, but skiing is super fun now because I'm like progressing really fast. But I think the thing is, like, our trail system actually for off-roading and overlanding is different than anywhere else. And because of the vehicle types that we have here, they ride differently, and people recognize that they come out here. The other thing too is it's low noise and slow speed. Which if you talk to people that are like avid overlanders or off-roaders, like one of the annoying things is that
two-stroke.
Two-strokes are just banging around them, or the UTVs, or people are trailblazing. It's kind of like, if you got like a really nice like, wake boat and you're out there surfing, but like the jet skis are just like all over your wake and stuff like that's kind of what the overlanders think of like when they think of like the dirt bikes and the side-by-side. So it's just kind of having this experience where it's just like, that was different. There's something really great about that I didn't get anywhere else.
See, where I argue with it is, as much as I want this to be like a core, like snowboarder, surf, skate community, and the next layer out is like mountain bike, dirt bike, e-bike, rally car, kind of, and then hunter, fisher, outdoor enthusiast beyond that. Like, as much as it's like, I really want to hold to my like snowboarder, skateboarder, surfer roots, I just, even as we were talking right here, I'm thinking like, do I want that more than I want families? And I'm not sure that I do. Or maybe something could have a snowboarder only section, but I'm actually more interested in less screen time, more family time, and like making those memories together that you're still thinking about 20 and 30 years later, so maybe that's answering my own question. Although on the dirt bike side, I do think about the noise thing, and I think maybe we will have the first electric only track, and we'll rent Stark Vargs and stuff like this, and like, maybe we'll make some noise of being like the only dirt bike track that is electric only, and cut that noise down.
Well, I think you have to curate the experience, right? Because it's going to be hard to make it the right experience for everybody, right? And same thing, like if you look at any ski resort, they don't let skiers and snowboarders and snowmobilers on the same terrain, right? It's kind of like there's still a separation of where like people go to experience the activity. And I think one is if the land that you have is large enough, you can segment probably very successfully. The other thought is, it sounds like you guys are doing a network of locations. So maybe some locations are specialized a little bit more where, and the thing about like the family thing is, I think that there's enough people doing this to where you could still have the family and the connection and the friends, even in a more specialized environment. So I think it's, because I mean, for us anyway, like our whole thing is about a premium experience with the outdoors. So even like the state park that's close to here, their trail system is on about 4,000 acres. They have 500,000 visitors a year. So on any given day and the weekend when it's busy, they've got 3,000 to 3,500 people in the park utilizing 4,000 acres in one day, right? You're sitting in line for an hour to get in the gate. You're constantly in a queue from the gate down to the trailhead. There's tons of people everywhere. It's not a it's not a premium experience anymore, right? So for us, like we're thinking we're going to cap it around 400 people a day on a 5,500 acre, kind of piece of land, right? So I think it's one of these things that it goes in with the business model of, and that's one thing that I think that you have to be committed to is what's the mission and vision, what's the business model, and how does this make sense for the brand that you're building? And kind of like that's the way that I think about it. And you know, depending on what sports and stuff like that you're going to be doing outdoors, there's naturally going to be a little bit of a clashing sometimes, right? And this is kind of the thing that we've really talked about is that, hey, can we have mountain bikers out and people off-roading in the same area and they're cool with each other, So these are still things that we're just kind of figuring out and doing. But I think because of some of the decisions we made, we've seen a huge influx from across the nation for off-roading and overlanding here, which is interesting. We weren't expecting that.
Well, you're also sending the signal like we are for you, right? Instead of the we're for everybody, which doesn't seem to work well. To say yes to people, it's very hard to truly say yes to people without saying no to other people.
And even when you say yes to a specific group, you still can't say yes to everybody in that group or make them happy on everything, right? That's just one of the things that we learned very quickly because I'm not from a hospitality background, right? So I mean, it's when we did this park, and when you're an entrepreneur and you have a vision, you go do something. I remember probably about 4 months into this business, and I mean, this is how maybe not thought out everything. I one night on a Saturday night, I just sat up in bed at 3:00 in the morning, and I realized there was a bunch of people out here at the park, and I was like, I own a business that's a 24/7 business now. And it's 4 months into the project before I realized that had that thought, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole different ball game than anything I've done before, right? So I think it's you learn you can't say yes to everybody. I think if you segment down enough, you can say yes to the majority, and I think that's really what you're looking for. And the other thing that's interesting too is we can't financially compete with a state park or a national park, right? We can't compete with somebody paying $8 to go in for a day and do stuff. I mean, land is expensive. I mean, this, right? For the kind of premium experiences you're wanting to create, it takes a lot of money today. And so we have to kind of create these premium experiences where people will pay above and beyond to go have a really amazing experience. And I do think that for us, we can't be for everybody. So, if it's kind of hey, I don't want to spend a lot of money on a great outdoor experience, then I'm like, okay, cool. Go to the state park, go to the national park, go to public access land, whatever it is, it's right for you. But we have to cater to, people that want to pay for a premium experience, that want to pay for great customer service, that want to pay for, having that community of people that are like-minded and sharing those experiences with. And I think, figuring that out, that's kind of the Rubik's Cube of kind of trying to figure what the combination on that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm interested in how you made choices about risk and insurance and those kind of things.
So one of the things that I really like about Texas is Texas already has a lot of liability protection built in from the state level. I don't know, and this is where we're going to have to be very selective about where we open our next locations, right? That unlike other states, Texas actually has very, very little public access land. I think across the whole state, less than 5% of all land is public access land in Texas. So the state of Texas actually has provisions that say if you use your private land to accommodate any kind of public access, tourism, activities, it's called agritourism. And there's already a lot of built-in protections from the state of Texas. So besides that, we have multiple insurance policies, umbrella policies. I mean, we spent a lot of money, with attorneys on our waivers and making sure, that's something we're stickler on is nobody puts, their foot on the land without a waiver. And we do as much as we can to, really run a safe operation here. Knock on wood, in 30 months, we haven't had any serious injuries here. And that includes, we've had vehicles that have tipped on their sides and we've had vehicles that have rolled onto their roofs. But again, it's also speed, right? So it's kind of one of these things again, like one of the big reasons we said no to these other vehicle types is that speed kills, right? I mean, like if you're going 3 miles an hour and your car rolls over, it's like you're probably going to get banged up a little bit, but it's not like you're flying 70 miles an hour down a trail in a side by side and you flip, right? So for us, we made some really key decisions again about like what does liability look like, what does it look like in Texas, and then what kind of insurance do we need to carry to mitigate any kind of risk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what are those kind of policies called? Like, I mean, is it general liability? Like, what is that even called for? Like, what if we get sued if our visitors crash their car? What is that insurance called?
Yeah, so I mean, like, there's a lot of different. We actually visited with a lot of different insurance agents, and some of these quotes that people were coming back with were just insane. We're just like, we can't afford that, like carrying those kind of policies, So again, what we did is like really paired up on the liability protection from the state of Texas, and then we just stacked umbrella policies on top of general liability. We didn't find anything that was out in the market that was really specific to what we were doing or that would be a good match for us, without being just hundreds of thousands of dollars. So for us, there's a level of risk that we feel like, hey, we're comfortable with the liability protection from the state of Texas, from IGL policies, things like that. But I think like that is going to be something to navigate in the future, especially with kind of like off-road driving. I mean, we've had some $100,000 vehicles that have ended up on their roofs out here, just people not really know what they're doing, and it's kind of like, man, you go to your insurance company and they're like, well, what were you doing? I was off-roading in an off-road, adventure park. It's like, I think like those kind of conversations, I think insurance in this space is going to be an interesting development over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what do you guys do? Like, what do you see on that?
I don't know. I think that we are just looking at the kind of insurance ski hills get and the kind of insurance that like skydiving operations get. And, the kind of insurances that like motocross tracks get. And I think that's kind of the direction we're going, because we are probably looking at a little more, Red Bull X Games type of activities. And, I've done those my whole life, and that's why I've been hurt for a lot of my life, and canes and crutches and these kind of things. I think that's what we're looking for is, I mean, for us, we actually see it as a little bit of a barrier to entry as, most people are just at some place like this, they're just offering a plain vanilla Airbnb, let alone like something so awesome that X Games athletes want to come train at it, So you look at like a Woodward, you look at some of these kind of places, and I think we're leaning a little more that direction.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
I went skydiving for the first time on my birthday a little over a year ago, and like as I'm signing the waiver, they're like, if you die, your family can't sue us. Just so you know, these policies have precedence of standing up in court. And you're like watching a little video.
Yeah, did you watch the video before you had to do and like all that kind of stuff?
So not only did I have to sign waivers, I had to watch a video, right? And but I take my kids to Woodward, and it's like a mega ramp. So I think we're up 3 stories, and then we go down and then up, maybe a 12-foot jump, and then it's a foam pit that's maybe, I don't know, 50 feet long. So like there's no way you could hit.
Are you guys going to Copper for that, or do they have one up in Park City?
They got one in Park City. So, people do it on bikes. They have these snowboards with like rollerblade wheels, so you can snowboard and do it. And so we're looking more of that, like, how can we provide something that almost nobody else has the guts to, and we'll just have to charge more to cover the kind of insurance that like a skydiving place has.
Yeah, and I think like that is, if you're kind of in this outdoor entrepreneur space right now, because I mean, obviously, we're kind of looking at 2 different things. One is land holding, and the other one is actually an operating business that's an outdoor brand. But I mean, you have to have a little bit of a risk for appetite for risk on this kind of stuff, because I mean, like you are doing, I mean, especially with the stuff that you're going to do, like people are going to get hurt. Like that's just a given, right? It's not if, it's when. But at the same time, like I think that people want that, right? I mean, I think for us, like we tend to kind of like the way we build our trails, and like when we go on trail runs and do things, like we push people a little bit, right? Because at the end of the day, that's where the greatest experiences are created. It's like when you push yourself a little bit past your comfort zone, you have that just like, yeah, that was awesome. Like that's what creates the experience and what makes somebody like come alive and connect with other people at the end of the day.
Listen, it's not for everyone, right? I mean, look, we live in a society of helicopter parents, bubble wrapped everything, helmets on top of helmets. Like, I'm a helmet fan, so I'm not ripping on that. But my point is, like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's the Securities and Exchange Commission won't let you invest in things if you're not rich enough, because they're worried you'll make a poor choice. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of softness built in. And guess what? That works for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that don't want to do anything besides go to the cubicle, come home, go out to dinner with friends, go to the movie with their friends, and that's kind of their life, and they love it. And I'm not even, they want to go on walks in the park. Like, there's beautiful parks in LA or New York and stuff. That's great if that's what you're into. But there is this population like me that wants a thrill. Do you know what I mean? Like, adrenaline junkie is a cliche for a reason. There's a whole bunch of us, right? And because of insurance concerns, there's not a lot of great stuff for us. Do you know what I mean? Like, I look at ski hills. I mean, this is later down the road for me, but I look at ski hills and I'm like, hold on, you have this huge mountain and you've got like 3% of it have jumps and rails and stuff, and that's your terrain park, right? Like, there's a major opportunity for somebody to make an entire mountain of hips and jumps and rollers and like significant fun the whole way down. Not just that, like, oh, you got to take the lift and you got to ride for 20 minutes, 15 minutes to get to the one part for the run, and then you have to ride 10 minutes back to the lift.
Yeah, like that's where you get the reps in, right? I mean, like, that's the same. Like, when we build our off-road trails, it is obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, right? So people are like, they say, like, people always, I think, like, Moab's like the mecca, right, for off-roading. And they're like, oh, I've been to Moab. And we're like, look, I love Moab. I mean, I go there, 2 to 3 times a year. I love that place. But at the same time, there's sometimes you get on a trail and you're on the trail for 3 hours and you hit like 10 obstacles. I mean, you're going to hit 10 obstacles within the first like 10 minutes that you're on our trails. It is just relentless, because that's where you get the reps in. You get really good at it. We tell people, like, come to Merus to get the experience and the confidence and the skill you need to go exploring everywhere else, right? And the same thing, like, you got a ski hill that's got just terrain parks everywhere. I mean, if you're doing that stuff all day, I mean, the reps that you get in, instead of, like, because sometimes it's easier just to kind of go down and like unstrap and then hike back up, and that's faster than going down, right? So, but here's kind of a point too, is like, I think that there's a lot of closet, like, adrenaline junkies. I think there's people that really want to do it, but they may not even want to tell their spouse, or like, we've seen people come out here and all of a sudden they do something and like they come alive in a way that their spouse just kind of looks at them like, who are you? And I think that people want that experience. They want a place to safely be able to kind of practice it and do it and come alive. And I mean, it just takes you down a whole different path in life. I mean, I think it truly just wakes you up and makes you realize, like, there's more to it.
I think about this a lot. I love books like The Talent Code, Peak, The Practicing Mind, just all about myelination and how humans become experts the fastest, right? And like, we're really close to buying this property south of Grand Canyon. And it's very much going to be like a mountain bike, e-bike, possibly electric dirt bike. We'll see. But it's like very much a bike. We'll have skateboard ramps and some other stuff, but like super artistic ones look like a giant sculpture, okay? But it's like very much a bike-centric type of approach for this one. And my plan is like, just like 1,000 steps of gradation. Just like a jump that's 6 inches bigger, a jump that's 6 inches bigger, a jump that's 6 inches bigger, a jump that's 6 inches bigger. I think about all the worst accidents in skateboarding. And it's like, you're with some kids and these other dudes are like, they want to show how tough they are. And they're like, do you dare me to jump that 8 stair? I'm like, no, dude, you've never landed a 3 stair. No, I don't dare you to jump the 8 stair. Like, why don't you land the 3 stair like 40 times and then do a 4 stair 40 times? Well, you're going to do like 150 times until you land it 20 times. Then a 5 stair. Then, no, I don't dare you to jump the 8 stair or the 10 stair. I remember dirt biking it. When I was first getting into it, my guy who I was with, we go out together and we have the whole track to ourselves. And somebody's got a freestyle motocross, metal ramp, huge, large gap to a large mound for the landing, right? He's like, you dare me to do that? I was like, no, dude, you're not a good enough dirt biker. I don't. And he's like, I'm going to do it. Because he wanted to look cool, right? And then the worst thing happened. He landed the first one. he got up, he cleared it, and landed on the other side. And those dirt bikes have great shocks. And I was like, phew, oh my gosh, we didn't have to go to the hospital. He's like, you dare me do it again? I was like, no, quit while you're ahead. Like there's like 40 other jumps on this track. Like why don't you like go land that double before you try this free some? No. He's like, I'm gonna. And of course, just a little bit wrong, endos on the top of the mound. And all I see is him going head first over the hill with a bike coming over to land on him. I'm like, I guess we're on our way to the hospital. And we were, right? And so like, I want some crazy jump that like the action sports magazines want to come out and take pictures of. And the residents want to like go walk up on it and take a picture that looks like they were on it or something. But like, I expect them to spend like an inverse relationship. Like the bigger the jump, the less it gets used, but just have like 15, 20 gradations down to, that action sports dad who's got a 4-year-old on his first bike and he's been on a 2-wheeler for like 2 months. And now they want to go do some little rollers. I want to have a place for grandpa to take the 4-year-old or dad to take the 4-year-old. And then there's a place for the 6-year-old, the 9-year-old, the 12-year-old, the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old, and that idea of like meaningful repetitions that is just barely outside the comfort zone, not to the braking zone. That's where progress is made.
Well, and I think like that's such a great model for anything that you do, right? Any kind of training to kind of stair step it up. Because same thing, when we built everything, we thought we were going to kind of get more like hardcore people and this and that, and probably 40% of our user base are brand new. Like we get people here that have never even put a vehicle in 4-wheel drive, right? And then another 40-50% of people are like intermediate. They're not like the hardcore, like, for us, like hitting the double black trails and stuff like that. It's like, they just want to be able to kind of go out. Now they've always got that trail that's like like, oh, I want to do that trail one day. And like, every once in a while, like we get a member of this, they come out with a stock vehicle and then they show up like 4 months later and they got a lift kit, bigger tires, and they show up, it's just like this progression and then they can finally do it. But it's same thing. You don't take that vehicle out the first day and go do that trail because it's going to end very badly, and unfortunately, same thing. I'm thinking about like a lot of ski areas, that they don't have a good progression of, just kind of hit the smaller jump, get really comfortable with it. And then, you gotta go so fast. I think like that's one thing that people so underestimate, like with, action sports, is how fast you actually have to hit these big jumps to even just clear the gap and hit the landing zone, right? It's like, it doesn't even compute until you're actually doing it. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to go fast, right? But that's where, again, the speed is where you get hurt, right? So I love the idea of like having these kind of step ups. And I think like that's the thought behind it, right? Is that you have people that are investing in projects that are users of it, that have been doing this for years. And they know that there's a better way to do it. And they know that there's a better way to kind of design these and curate these experiences. All the way from like, what you've talked about before is like, how do you design a great cabin that matches the needs of somebody that's going out and doing the thing versus, kind of a generic hotel room that's not set up at all for like, oh, I've got like all this extra gear and whatever the case is. Like, I think the more kind of entrepreneurs that are getting into the space that actually do the thing, I think like that's where the good stuff's happening.
Well, and I think you're so smart to have like your full meal deal cabins for that family member who isn't into it, but they're willing to come anyways, right? Like I plan on having a great pool, tons of zip lines and life-size Jenga sets and like all these fun things, because it's like, okay, other families are going to be like my family where they've got a 17-year-old who is just like eat, breathes, and sleeps mountain biking. And just, they can't talk. They're so obsessed, and like mom and dad, they want to do something for that kid, right? And so I guess we're going to the Grand Canyon anyways. Let's go. Yes, we can stay at that place, right? But it's like, what about the little sister who is like, she's into dance? You know what I mean? Like she's a dancer. She hasn't put in the meaningful repetitions. What does she want to do, right? And like this idea of like fun for the whole family. And another one for me on like that step up is creativity. Like we plan on having painting stations, pottery wheels, drawing classes. Like we plan on having our staff like teach yoga in the morning, drawing class, painting. These. A lot of people have never done printmaking. It's very easy to like rearrange the letters and make your stuff, and then you put the big thing down and roll it, and you've made your own poster. And it's just a novel experience, but it's one of a kind and it has you in it, right? And like my real dream is to have a blacksmith forge and a glass blowing station. I think that might be like, we might be a couple properties into it before we get to that level. But like this idea of like a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of creativity, a lot of nature, and very few screens is kind of what I'm looking for.
So I got a quick question for you. Like the locations you guys are looking at, are you looking at the most of your user base will actually be staying on property, or will they be staying in the hotels close? Or
we haven't really looked into your type of model of like letting people come have day passes. Ours is much more the like, hey, this is a private park and you can only use it if you're staying here. And keep the crowds down, keep kind of the exclusivity up, and kind of, like my hope is, family goes to Grand Canyon for 3 days, and on the third day, some of the kids are like, "Do we have to go to the park? Can't we just stay here, Dad?" Or it's like they're going to Jackson Hole, they're going to this surf beach, they're going to these things where it's like it's so much fun. The family's like, maybe we'll stay an extra day and just play on property, Like for the snowboarding locations, we want to have it where it's like, okay, we're going here to ride anyways, going to Jackson Hole, going to Whistler, going to something like this, right? And it's like, 4 o'clock comes by and like the dads and moms are like, oh my gosh, get these boots off of me. I haven't worked that hard in a long time. I sit at a desk at work, right? And like your 12-year-old and 15-year-old like, great, what's next? And you're like, me laying on the bed. That's what's next, right? But it's like there's lights and there's rope tow and there's a private snowboard park. So it's like, you come home from the hill and the teenagers can go ride for another 4 hours outside while mom and dad are like, sitting in the hot tub, right? And then the idea is like, hopefully it's so fun that they're like, well, let's not even go to the resort on the last day. This is actually like, this has got cooler stuff than the resort. Like, we're not going to be able to match their vertical feet, but maybe we can create, some rails, some jumps, something. One of my friends out here, he's got a channel called Porter MTB. He's got, I don't know, 150, 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, okay? One of his most highly rated videos is he bought an old water slide and put it in his backyard mountain bike park for him and his boys. And it's like,
I think I've seen that.
It's not even that crazy because it doesn't have like huge ups and downs, but it's just novel enough that it's like, people want to take that picture for Instagram. People want to like go home and tell their friends, oh, guess what I rode, right? Yeah. And you're not getting that at the resort. Like, Deer Valley has just amazing mountain bike trails here. Woodward has amazing mountain bike trails. They don't have any water slides that you can ride your bike on though, So it's like, it's not even that it all has to be better, but can it be different? Can we have stuff that's like, literally, if you want this picture, there's only one place in the country to get it, and it's on our property,
I love that idea because it makes me think of it's like the amusement park for the activity. And really that's how, like for us, we think about our trails that way. Like, I think of, kind of lived in areas close to like a Six Flags in Texas. I don't know if you're familiar with those parks, right? But when they build a new roller coaster, like it's a huge thing and there's like a big reveal and it's like and we do the same thing with trails now. Like we'll work on a trail and we'll have like this big reveal of the trail and it's like the new thing and it's a curated trail. Like we built this thing with purpose. We built it to where your vehicle is going to do this. You're going to be this off camber. You're going to experience this. You're going to see these views, and it's just, I think like that's the cool thing that we're heading into, right? Like, if there were 100 more people like you and I that were doing cool stuff, it's just going to add such better experiences for families to go out and be served in the outdoors.
And I mean, one of the reasons I was excited to have you on the show is like, you're doing this out in Texas. I'm doing more like Intermountain West. We might do a Hawaii, but we're doing a lot of, up and down the I-15, right? Like the more of us that there are, that can create something special, like genuinely one of a kind, right? Don't go buying the same manufactured home or the same glamping tent or the same dome that everybody else buys. Like something that there's like one of one, right? To me, I don't see you as competitive. I see you as building this industry together because let's face it, like the same family isn't going to come to my park every time. Like I hope if it's an annual trip and they want to keep coming back, they're not coming to my place every weekend. Right? People love variety. Like, great YouTube channels don't necessarily compete with each other. They just get people more programmed to watch YouTube. Do you know what I mean? like Walt
Yeah,
Disney.
I think the collaboration is what I'm excited about, because it's like that's exactly it. If we can get people to stop doing the traditional kind of vacation where, you get the hotel and you go do the thing and it's just like bland, and now you're doing a vacation where it's like, you as a family you're like high fiving and fist bumping and just like, oh my gosh, like a dad did that, a mom did this, and I mean it's those kind of engagements like just add to the connectivity of that family and add to the closeness of it, right? And I love the idea of create kind of an activity for everybody. Like we've got kind of a model in that we're going to be working on over the next 2 years here. And what's funny is like we actually are modeling some of what we're doing kind of like after like kind of what a ski area is, right? Like we have a rec center now. It's kind of like, hey, you come here and grab a cup of coffee and grab a burrito before you kind of hit the trails, and like after the trails you're kind of back over here, and it's again it's adding the community. Like the ski industry has done that really well of bringing people kind of together and hanging out at the lodge during the day and afterwards, like ski après and like all this kind of stuff, right? It's just like it's a cool model.
Do you know how many New Yorkers come out by us to Park City, where there's members of that party that never get on the slopes at all during the whole vacation, and they still had a lot of fun, right? They never rode one chairlift, but still had fun on the ski trip, right?
Yeah, they were dressed in the nines, all ski gear and all that kind of stuff, and like they were just
and like
I love it.
I don't know that's necessarily my people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want a place where, like, a family of 4 can come sleep for $160. Like, a family of 8 can be there for, like, 200 and something bucks. You know what I mean? Right? Like, I want to, like, a little bit of this is mission driven for me. Like, action sports and nature and outdoor with my friends and my mom and dad and cousins, like, those are like some of the most meaningful memories of my entire life. And I just actually want more people to have that. So like we looked at doing a $200 million resort in Tulum where it's going to be like $1,500 a night to stay. And like, I'm not against owning something like that. And there's a place for it. But like part of what I'm excited about here is like, can we actually make action sports more affordable instead of less affordable? I mean, Park City's like, I think it gets up to like $200 a day for a lift ticket. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If that had been the case when I was a kid, I would not have been snowboarding. Like, I mean, tickets were way cheaper when I was a kid, and I still had to go to the national park and hike a bunch because I didn't have enough money for lift tickets. Like, how can we make something where this isn't like, so Walt Disney is for sure my biggest inspiration for this. Like, he was constantly, his business partners, his investors, everybody is like, no, Walt, that's too crazy. You can't do that, right? And then he's like, fine, I'll just do it myself. And then they all got on board and they're like, we won't own that with you, right? And like Six Flags is great, Knott's Berry Farm, all these other amusement parks are great. Nobody holds a place in the customer mind like Disneyland. Do you know what I mean? Because they just went to the nth degree and it became this destination in itself, right? And so I just feel like there are 1,000 hotel rooms. It's a box with a bathroom. Do you know what I mean? And a TV. And they're like, you could dim the lights and not know if you're at a Marriott, a Hyatt, a Hilton. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a sea of sameness, right? There's no place to wash the mud off your boots from like getting out of your overlander and stepping in a mud puddle up to your knee. And you know what I mean? Like it's not purpose built. It's not purpose built for your community and my community,
I do think like that's one of the big challenges though, right? Is that, how do you create something that's affordable for most people when, the cost of land and construction and amenities and staff and all that kind of stuff is so high? Like that is kind of the battleground that we're at, right? Because it's like, at a certain level, if we're trying to make it, more accessible to more people, it's just like, man, the road to cash flowing is just not there, right? So I think like that is one of the challenges.
I'm so with you, right? So we actually had a deposit on a $3 million property in Hawaii, beachfront, that had E5 zoning, so we could put multiple properties on it and stuff. And ultimately just couldn't get comfortable with the Airbnb risk regulatory-wise of, having our Airbnbs become, be illegal, right? But we keep looking at Hawaii, and we're looking a lot at some great surf breaks in Costa Rica. And there's just no way I'm going to be able to do a Hawaii experience for the kind of pricing we can do in Costa Rica, which is a land scarcity issue. Like, it's just, I'm going to try and get as close as I can to something that's accessible, but it's just fact of life. Like there are, if we end up with a Hawaii experience, it will not be price parity with our Costa Rica experience. Just like we keep looking at stuff south of Park City right here and near my house and all these mountains, and it just will not be price comparative to what we're doing in the desert in Grand Canyon. It won't. It just, we won't be able to serve like when I was a kid, my dad made like 50 grand a year, right? If we end up getting some property where you can actually see the Park City ski resort on the big lake, the reservoir here, I probably wouldn't have been able to see it as a kid. Like it will be for a somewhat different customer. And it's just, nobody's going to give me their land. Nobody's going to give me their land for 10 times cheaper than they could sell it to somebody else. And like, it's aspirational and this will be somewhat location dependent. But I do think there's a special place of like the mostest for the leastest. What is the most one of a kind experience we can get, and what is the least we can charge for it and still give our investors a 30% per year return plus or something, or like obviously that's going to be property dependent, but how can we make a really attractive financial return with the most accessible pricing for the customer? And I think that the easy answer is, our property is just for rich people. And I think that that's what a lot of people do. And so that's why I think this like pushing ourselves on, can we make something truly special without it only being for rich people? I don't see a ton of competition. So I don't know.
No, I think that it's such a huge market. And I think that there's a lot of different models out there. And I think like that it comes back to the previous conversation of, you got to be specific about what each location is going to be offering, and just realizing that you're not going to be able to offer it to everybody. And I think like that's what the cool thing is. If your vision's big enough and you got this kind of network effect, you can have multiple locations that kind of check different boxes, right? And I think like that's the exciting thing. It's a cool space to be in. I mean, we're still got a lot to learn, but we're excited to be on this journey.
I know we're out of time, but I'm kind of excited that you are planning on doing multiple locations, because the more of us that build a brand that means something, like it's great if you have one property. That's great. Stoked for you. But if you can build a brand that means something, and we can get more Americans or visitors to America to be like, oh, I'm going to go on tour. Like, I love that brand. I want to go try out each of their properties, right? Like, think about overlanding. Overlanders want to go see something else cool. They don't want to go to the same location every time, right?
Right.
We could program families to be like, hey, let's go do something awesome. I want, like you said, you open up a new trail. Like I'm hoping every time we open up a new property, we email everybody who stayed at any one of our properties and be like, hey, guess what, folks? We've got Big Sky, Montana, or hey, we've got Lake Powell, Utah, with one of the warmest lakes, and there's something that you've never seen before. Just click here to find out what you've never seen before.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. I mean, just build raving fans from the start, and people that believe in your brand. And because the truth is, like for us, there's no way that there's no way that we're ever going to achieve what we're going to do in the space without the people that have been with us from the start, right? The members that were some of the first members, right? Pete and Vianne, right? Newell. I mean, they were like member like number 3. They didn't know me. They didn't we just kind of threw this dream out there, and like they bought a membership, and the first time they showed up here, it's just like there was nothing here, and they've just kind of seen this progression, and now they're investors and partners with us, and it's like that's what I love, is that you build a reputation, and you show people that you care about what you're doing, and you're authentic to what you said you were going to be authentic to. I think like that's the thing that's going to power these brands, right? And it's that just raving fan culture of people being willing to support you, and realizing that it's hard work. I mean, it's not easy doing this kind of stuff, because it is kind of creating new markets and new industries.
Yeah,
so
I love it. Listen,
it's interesting and fun.
I know we're over time, but I just had so much fun talking to you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, Jess, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Okay, again, we'll give people websites where they can come check this out.
Yeah. So merusadventure.com, MERUS, and also on Instagram and Facebook at Merus Adventure.
I love it. Bye, everyone.